The Philadelphia 76ers have been the clear-cut winners of the NBA offseason, but there's one signing that has not gotten enough attention. In this video, I want to talk about why Eric Gordon could be a bigger part of this Sixers team than people want to acknowledge, why he could be the perfect fit as a role player around Joel Embiid. There's been a lot of talk about the Paul Georges of the world, the Caleb Martins, the Gershon Yabuselis. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about this Sixers team, but I think that fans are discounting how much that Eric Gordon could be one of those as well. We did get the report way back pretty early in free agency that Eric Gordon is signed to a one-year deal with the Sixers. Did shake out to be slightly more than a veteran's minimum. Basically, whatever the change was left in the salary cap is kind of the good faith how things worked out there. But the bottom line is that Eric Gordon is going to be a part of the Sixers team. He took a little bit less money than I think was likely his market value to make it happen. This is the same guy who declined some player options for I believe around $15 million that he could have potentially had, decided to enter free agency. I think for Gordon specifically, he's a player who's been around the block quite a bit, been in the NBA for quite some time. He wants to play for a contender. He wants to be able to contribute on the contender, and I think the Sixers check about all those options here. Now, we did hear from Gordon specifically, who was asked about his decision to sign with the Sixers, and he said, quote, "When you have the chance to play for a world-renowned organization with a good coaching staff and a potentially good team, it was almost a no-brainer. I know Daryl is religious about winning." And I do love this. There obviously is the relationship between Daryl Morey and Eric Gordon dating back from their time with the Houston Rockets. Gordon having some of his best seasons there. He was very clearly a part of this hardened ball, this changed to 3-and-D style of basketball. And if you want some evidence of this, shout out to my guy Trey for being on top of this here. But you can take a look at Eric Gordon's shot chart, and this is something that just straight up warms the heart of Daryl Morey here. There it is, three-pointers, it is at the rim, and there is nothing in between. You're not going to see Eric Gordon pulling up for a mid-range now, tomorrow, or at any point when he is on a basketball court, but that is what Daryl Morey wants, and that is what is important when kind of building out the entirety of a team. Now, to give the full picture of what Eric Gordon is, that last season he averaged 11 points per game, 2 assists, 1.8 rebounds, shot 37.8% from three, 44.3% from the field. Did shoot 41.3% from the corner. He is 35 years old. I know that's going to be the number one thing that is held against him. And just 6'3". I do wish he was a little bit bigger, but he's got a little PJ Tucker in him from the fact that he can play as an undersized role. He is a bulldog. He is strong. And he is a guy that I think most importantly is going to be a floor spacer to the fullest extent. That this is not a Tobias Harris-like shooter who needs his toes on the three-point line to be ready to let it fly. Eric Gordon is very comfortable stepping back a couple feet from beyond the three-point arc and still letting that thing rip. And when we talk about spacing and maximizing a roster built around Joel Embiid, that's the most important thing. Now, currently, the expectation is for Eric Gordon to be coming off the bench with this Sixers team. That all assumptions, and to pull up the full depth chart here, that the starting lineup is going to look something to the effect of Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre Jr., Paul George, Caleb Martin, and Joel Embiid. But where my head is going is I think there's going to be a real conversation to be had at some point this year. Is the roster better utilized if Eric Gordon is in that starting shooting guard spot and Kelly Oubre is coming off the bench? Now, I'm a big fan of Kelly Oubre and what he brings to the Sixers team. I think he exceeded just about everyone's expectations last year, averaging 15.4 points per game, 5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, shot 44.1% from the field, just 31.1% from three, which is probably the biggest reason we're going to be having this conversation. As I mentioned, spacing is the name of the game when you're building a team around a big man like Joel Embiid. And Kelly Oubre just is not as good of a shooter as he kind of needs to be. 31.1% from three overall, 33% from the corner. I will note there's some pretty notable difference in shooting splits for when Joel Embiid is on the floor and when he's not. I should have pulled those up before this video, but it is something to the effect of, I believe, over a 40% swing as far as shoots that much better with Embiid. That's kind of the case for all players because of the gravity that he possesses and kind of how he opens things up within the offense. But even still, Kelly at his best in that situation is a notch below what we're talking about with Eric Gordon. And kind of the concern with Gordon specifically, it is age. It is a guy being washed or not having it anymore. There's a number of guys where you could throw this critique out. I'll throw Kyle Lowry right in the mix with this team. But what I think should be noted is this is a guy that's still doing it. Like, to take a look at his full stats here. There's like a motorcycle riding by out the window right now. But to take a look at his full stats, pull these up here. We're talking about just last season with the Phoenix Suns that he played 27.8 points per game, was a starter in 24 of the 68 games that he played with, still averaging 11 points. And when you look at the entirety of his career, a 37.1% three-point shooter on 6.2 2 attempts. That's high volume and solid efficiency there. And while I know the Phoenix Suns have not lived up to the championship contenders that they aspire or were built to be, it's not like he was out there just playing for the Washington Wizards the past couple years. This guy has still played competitive basketball. And to be perfectly honest, from all the Suns basketball that I watched last year, I came away impressed with Eric Gordon more nights than I wasn't. That I thought he played in a slightly different role. He put the ball on the floor more than we've seen from him in past years. When you think of kind of his traditional style of play with that Rockets team, which I'd probably argue was the peak for him specifically, it was catch and shoot. It was stand in the corner, be ready to get the pass from James Harden with 3 seconds on the shot clock and show up a 3 and play defense down the other end. That was the role for Eric Gordon. Last year, I thought we saw him in a little bit different light, that he was a guy taking people off the dribble. There was still kind of a spryness in his attack to the basket that I was really impressed by. Those are all things that I don't expect to just evaporate overnight and not be with him when he is in a Sixers uniform this year. And by the way, the dude has not stopped playing much basketball, as he did participate in the Olympics and some of the leading up. So kind of cool to see that he is a part of this year here. Now, to swing things back to the Kelly Oubre conversation, this has less to do about Kelly Oubre specifically and more about the fit to do within the team. With Kelly, we did the same exact dance last year. I do think there's something to having him come off the bench as a spark. That there is a little bit of a attitude, personality, and energy change when Kelly Oubre checks on the court. That I think there's value in that coming off the bench. And while I don't expect this to happen in the short term, to kind of call things how I see him here, I do think that there was a bit of an agreement in the signing with Kelly Oubre when he elected to return to the Sixers that he would be promised at least the first dibs at that starting job there. The exact phrasing in the Woj tweet when that first happened was to fill that Sixers starting shooting guard position, is what was said in that tweet. I don't know why they would say that if there was not a conversation there, especially when you kind of read through those string of tweets as all that news was breaking. That was not a common thing for most players. That was not attached a role in that initial tweet. So my guess is there were some conversations about Kelly wants to be a starter. And he's good enough to be a starter. This is not something coming anti-Kelly Oubre. I just think when kind of, picturing the full context of this team, there's a strong case to be made that shooting is the most important thing. And when you do think about building out this team, we've talked about this for years with Joel Embiid, that when you have a big man as your primary offensive weapon, the most important thing is to space the floor evenly around him. And we know what Joel Embiid brings to the team from a statistical standpoint. Coming off a year in which he had one of the most impressive seasons that I've seen ever in my life at 34.7 points per game, 11 rebounds, and 5.6 assists. And what he will be surrounded with, guarantee. Number one, we have the prize of the offseason in Paul George, who will bring his 22.6 points per game, his 41.3% from three, 45.7% from the corner. There, of course, will be Tyrese Maxey, expected to take the next step. And I think we'll have some positive shooting regression where he shoots better than the 37.3% that he shot last year. Still shot 61% from the corner, so I don't want to be too hard on the guy. And I do think that the drop in percentage really had nothing more to do with there being more on his plate. That during the stretch in which Joel Embiid was injured, looks don't come as easy for Tyrese Maxey. This has been a guy who's been top 5 in the NBA in three-point percentage twice already in his career. He's going to be just fine. But when talking about the full context of the Sixers team, think about how that fills out if you're making teams think twice of, can I double down or can I give that open three-point look? If you're talking about 3 guys on the perimeter in Eric Gordon, in Tyrese Maxey, and in Paul George, as well as Joel Embiid, and if you want to talk Caleb Martin in that 5th slot or whoever you want to bring into the mix here, that is some real troublesome stuff from a defensive standpoint. I think that Joel Embiid's passing is probably going to be the thing that is pushed this year, that they're still going to throw the doubles at Joel and force him to beat him as a playmaker, but I do think that he will take that stride forward and that there are pieces to punish this Sixers team far beyond past years. So for Eric Gordon, I have pretty high expectations for him, that this is not just a under-the-radar signing that, it's good to have, we'll see if we need him. This guy that I expect by the end of the season to have a pretty significant role carved out within this Sixers team. It would not shock me at all if he ends up the starting 2 guard at the season end. So I do want to hear from you guys. Are you on the same page as me, or are you not interested in the Eric Gordon campaign? I do think this guy can still play. I do think he's a great fit for this team, and I do think we're going to be seeing plenty of him this season. So let me know if you're on the same page as me. And as always, make sure you're supporting the channel. Drop a subscribe if you have not already. Drop a like on this video. I cannot wait for the Sixers season to officially be tipping off. It is almost here. The vibes are sky high. They're back at training camp, and I'm going to be with you from start to finish for the entirety of the season. So make sure you're rocking with me. Smash that subscribe button. And I'll talk with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.